Every band and artist that is on the come up that's watching this right now probably has the same question in mind, and it's how and when do we get a manager? So, based on your career experience, what would your response to that be?
Not to be evasive, I think it depends. I think that um,
Today on the show, we got Jordan Kurland, who is the co-founder of Brilliant Corners Management, and we're talking about acts like Death Cab for Cutie, Soccer Mommy, Postal Service. The list goes on and on with incredible talent that is running through this management company. And I'm honored to have him on the show today, kind of share some wisdom. Jordan, welcome.
thank you.
Every band and artist that is on the come up that's watching this right now probably has the same question in mind, and it's how and when do we get a manager? So, based on your career experience, what would your response to that be?
Not to be evasive, I think it depends. I think that um, you know the blanket statement I will make is you probably don't need a manager until later than you think you need a manager. Just in the perspective of a lot of bands think that oh, we've recorded a record or we're starting to play live shows, we need a manager. That might be the case for some very small amount of bands, but really, I think, to give the same advice about trying to find a booking agent, attorney, a record label, you want to do as much as you can on your own in general. You want to build up your audience. You want to, reach people. You want to show that you're out there working. That's going to make you more appealing to anybody you want to, that's going to be brought onto your team. And I think, obviously it's not a blanket statement that a record label manager booking, there are different times for different things, but, we've had, there's certainly artists that have a manager from the get-go, a friendager, so to speak, and they grow with that band. That's kind of how my management career started. And, there's other artists who, like, Death Cab for Cutie has been a client of mine for 22 years now. I mean, they were self-managed for the first 4 or 5 years of their career. They had a lot of help from the record label and their booking agent, and, people were picking up the slack. But there's no one rule, but I think the rule is do as much as you can, try to make it as appealing as possible for you to be in the best position to bring on the right manager, to bring on the right booking agent, to bring in, get record labels interested, or whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think a lot of artists get stuck in that mindset of like, okay, if I get a manager, that's the
Yeah,
switch that's going to take me to the
yeah,
next level, or if I get a label deal,
yeah,
that's the switch, or an
yeah,
agent, that's the switch. And
yeah,
in reality, it's kind of a sum of all parts situation. And when it
yeah,
comes to management, I think artists think of managers as people who come on board and kind of do everything for them, which is not the case. Do you kind of want to talk about maybe your philosophy of management and how that goes day in day for you?
yeah. Every management relationship's a little bit different. I mean, what we do for artists is pretty across the board, but that even can change from artist to artist a little bit based on what artists like doing, what they're capable of doing. Um, but at the end of the day, we're the business end of the creative entity. I think if you're looking at, to give a real life example outside of the music industry, I think you can look at us like we're, if you're trying to build a house for the general contractor, we work closely with the client, otherwise known as the artist, and we, um, we work with them closely on making decisions, coming up with a vision, coming up with a calendar, putting the team together, and managing the team. And we, if we're doing our job right, you know, our clients are not going to have to worry about the business side of things. They're going to be able to focus on, touring, making music, being creative, etc. Not to say that they're not going to be allowed into the conversations about business things. I mean, a number of our clients are very involved in the business still, but with us, um, kind of as the go between them and the representatives.
Yeah, I like what you said about being the general contractor, and it's kind of like outsourcing to subcontractors to
Yeah,
do the marketing, to do the publicity, to do X, Y, and Z, and then
yeah,
managing those subcontractors to make sure we're all going for the same goal and trying to achieve
yeah,
the same thing and making sure everybody's kind of doing their jobs and doing it on time.
Yeah, and doing it in a way that's, representing the band properly, right? I mean, that's also the important
Yeah,
part, right? You want to make sure if you're hiring a manager that you're hiring a manager who's not only good and capable, but they're representing you the way you want to be represented, right?
right,
Because, that their vision is aligned. Sometimes, your manager might be more ambitious than you are. You might be more ambitious than your manager. We've certainly had relationships end because of kind of differences about the next step of things, and that's just part of the business, right? You just need to be, and you're going to want to know how this person manages, right? Like if you're, some managers are more aggressive or they're screamers, some managers are, more, I guess I don't want to say cooperative, but are less adversarial, but still are able to get things done. You just have to think about how you want it all, how you want to be represented in the process.
yeah. And I think from my experience over the past 15 years, I think the screaming manager is kind of starting to fade away,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
getting more of the softer
Yeah.
managers. Not soft as
I,
in
yeah.
able to execute, but soft in just like how we approach our business tactics and stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you mentioned Death Cab for Cutie. You said what was it? You've been with them for 22 years.
Yeah. 2003.
What do you think? What do you think are some key ingredients to the longevity of a band or an artist to surpass multiple decades? Like, what does it take, and what kind of has to evolve in that timeline?
I mean, I think I'll say that I mean, I think it's, first of all, it's just working hard and showing up. I think that something that, and I think it's even more true now even than it was 22 years ago. Like you just being a successful artist over a long period of time, it's not, it's like being an athlete. Like you have to work at your craft, you have to hone your craft, you have to, there's a lot to this job that you're not going to enjoy doing. That's, you're like, well, this isn't what I signed up for, but it is actually part of the job. And, you have to remember, it's like, okay, maybe I don't want to get up at 7 a.m. to go play a song on a radio station morning show, but it beats, after I just took a tour bus for 6 hours and slept poorly. But hey, at least I'm not waking up to dig ditches, So I think, but I think it's just knowing that it's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of focus. And, at the end of the day, like, I think any artist that's or manager that would say otherwise is not telling the truth. It's like there's a lot of luck involved, at the end, timing. I wouldn't say luck, I think timing, right? Because every artist we work with, we work alongside everyone else on their team, like publicist, record label, all the things you ran down. But it's just, our goal is to get our clients' music in front of the court of public opinion. We can't control how the court of public opinion votes. That's the thing. Like we're I could tell, two brand new clients, you know, hey, like this is, you lay out the same plan, which we wouldn't do that, if, but say one client could, end up 2 miles up the road, the other one's like 50 feet up the road, and a lot of that might just, there's just variables that we don't have control of. Like our job is to try to give the best possibility of success, to create the best possibility of success for the artist by getting them in front of the right people and the right gate holders. Um, and from there, it's, like, and I want to like reduce it to a product, but like from there, it's like people, the general public then decides, like, do
Yeah,
they like this music? Do they want to bring it into their, do they want it on their earbuds? Do they want the record in their home? Do they want to buy a concert ticket? Do they want it on a t-shirt? Like, so,
yeah. The marketplace is the ultimate decider of, is this going to
yeah,
work right now?
yeah,
Is it going to work later? You never know, and
yeah,
it's kind of like
yeah,
we're playing with magic a little bit to a degree.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
so
timing's such a big part of it.
yeah, I recently read an interview with Irving Azoff, and he was talking about how management has changed since 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and here we are. And a lot of that has to do with streaming, obviously, and just the
Yeah.
digital revolution with social media and stuff like that. So if you think about like Death Cab for Cutie, kind of like when you jumped on board with them, and your approach at that time, what is the contrast to teaming up with a band or an artist now in 2025? And what are the
Hmm.
biggest differences you see in that approach with the band? Like, are you looking at different metrics than you would have back in the day?
Well, you have access to different metrics, right? And, obviously streaming numbers is publicly available, readily available. You're able to go in and say, oh, wow, this band has 144 Instagram followers, obviously doing something. They're connecting with someone somewhere, or this band has this. But yeah, I mean, it's a much different landscape. I think you have to, I think, it's, you have to, again, this is all kind of like an educated guess in some ways, right? Like based on your passion for an artist or type of music, based on what you think can do well, based on what you think, what's going to differentiate their music or their presence or their stage show from, the other thousands and thousands of artists out there. Um, but, I think the data is more available, but I also think you have to not get too, I mean, yes, you want to use that as a measuring stick, but you also don't want to make every decision based on data because sometimes, again, like maybe they only have 12,000 Instagram followers because they haven't been exposed to the right people, and they haven't had, because you could also look at it and say, well, all right, this band's getting, this is really impressive, the monthly spins, but then why are they selling 22 tickets in their hometown? So you have to just kind of look at it all. And I don't think I've answered your question yet. But I think to me, or at least the type of artists we manage, and for those listening that don't know, I mean, we're really kind of, we're primarily managing independent rock bands or independently oriented artists. So I think for us, it always is going to start with, do we love this music? And then from there is where the decisions are. Okay, do we love this music? Is there a marketplace for this music right now? And you can manage, sometimes you can manage a band that you feel like it has a pretty limited ceiling, right? With like, because there's other things going on that allow you to do that. And then you have to, but again, it's also you're deciding. I'm like, I'll be getting on board with this because I think they can go from, home plate to third base, or I'm getting on board with this. The band's gonna be hitting singles for a very long time. I don't think they're ever going to get to second base, but that's fine. As long as that's what their goals are and our goals are aligned. I just love the music and I want to do it. But the reason I got into artist management, maybe this is the best way to answer the overall question, is like the reason I got into artist management is because I just wanted to be close. I'm not a musician, and I wanted to be close to the creative process, and this allowed me to do that. And so my decisions are always, going to start with the passion for the actual music. And from there, it's getting to know the artist a little bit, make sure they're a nice fit, good fit. Like personality wise, are they going to, are they dependable? Are they, again, like I said earlier, are the goals aligned? If you're like looking at a band, you're like, oh God, these guys are great. I think within 3 years we can be, headlining, 2,000 cap venues throughout, throughout the US and major markets. But they feel like they want to be selling out stadiums in 2 years. Well, that's probably not going to, you might not be the best manager for them. You're setting yourself up for failure at that point, right? If, there's just a lot of factors. And every manager has a different evaluation process. Some managers might get in and just be totally data driven. Like, I'm going to do this. I think, um, but to us, it starts with loving the music, and then you evaluate everything else going on, right? And including what else is on our roster. If right now we have a few quote unquote developing artists, I don't mean that as an insult. It's just like we have artists that are kind of, on their first or second record, they're building an audience, and like, do we have space for more of that? Or do we need, if we're taking something on, does it need to be something that is further afield? Because, for a company of our size, and we're not big by any stretch, but, as a boutique company, it's a pretty significant investment to manage an artist in terms of staff time, and staff time is money.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
traditionally, a manager is going to take commission off of revenue. So that could be on the lowest end, probably 10%, and on the highest end, maybe 25%, if we're all being
Yeah.
fair, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about an artist in those early stages of their career kind of outsourcing things to a management consultant? Do you think that is beneficial? Do you think it's going to hurt them in any way, or is it overall going to help kind of push them in the right direction, maybe
I
having
think
those spare hands?
I think it could. I mean, I've never, yeah, I mean, I think, sure, it's not, again, I think it depends on what they're looking for and what the expectations are. Like, is that consultant like, okay, I'm just going to help you make decisions and like kind of streamline your business in a way that, or is it someone who's going to be like, hey, I'm going to shop, pay me $5,000 and I'm going to shop your demo, like it's not, I think, yeah, I mean, just like any business, right? Because, I always feel like I don't want to take, when I say things like business or client or product, like it's not to take away from the artistry, right? But when I say, but like the reality is the music business is a business, obviously. And every artist is a company at the end of the day. So if you're bringing on a consultant who's going to help you grow your business and be smart about how you set up your business for success, sure, that's a good idea if you feel like they actually know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Um,
If they have a
so
track record, right?
yeah,
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 yeah. A
exactly.
positive track
Uh,
record.
yeah, exactly. So, but I would be wary of anyone who's like, I'm going to get your music to the head of A&R at Interscope Records for $5,000. That's probably
Yeah.
not worth it. So,
Yeah. And it's a little scammy, and everybody should kind of run
yeah,
the other direction when you hear
yes,
something like that.
yes, yeah. Because I
Let's
charge $10,000 for that service. I mean, really, it's just yeah,
Hey, that's
yeah,
cheaper than what I charge.
yeah, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit of behind the scenes stuff in the sense of artist management, and going back to my earlier statement where a lot of up and coming bands and artists think a manager kind of does a little bit of everything, and they do to a degree, but not in reality. Um, what are some things behind the scenes that they may not realize a manager is doing? Um, and that could be fielding the 3 a.m. phone calls because the tour bus broke down, or
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
Anything come to mind?
It's No, I mean that is something, like you get 3 a.m. phone calls because the tour bus broke down. You get 11 p.m. phone calls because someone's really sick. You get, when you have an artist, when you have artists on tour in, other parts of the world, you kind of have to just be available because, with the time difference, because you might get a call, something might come up in the middle of the night. I think again, it's all are very artist dependent too. Like some artists, I rarely hear from past business hours, and some artists, it's more frequent. But yeah, I mean that's part of it. I think a big part of what you know a big part of what we do is the not sexy part of the bit. It's like in Spinal Tap. There's no sex, drugs, and rock and roll for Ian. It's like it's it's a lot of time on the phone. It's a lot of time in front of a computer answering emails. It's a lot of time with spreadsheets. It could be, I mean, it's an incredibly rewarding, fun job a lot of the time. And it's also it would probably look a lot like other office jobs in maybe a cooler environment with music playing in the background, um, much of the time as well. Um, that's the reality of it. I mean, you have to really, there's much easier ways to make a living than being an artist manager and working in the music business in general, right? So you have to really just love it and be passionate about it and be patient. I think with management in particular, you're living and dying the same way that your clients are. It took me a very long time to make ends really meet, as a manager. It only takes one band to have that success, and then you're in a much different position, and people are, more people are taking your phone calls, and et cetera, et cetera. But it could take a really long time, and I know a lot of really, really talented people who are no longer in the music business, and it just happened because of then the timing wasn't there. The companies they work for contracted. It's just again, like I don't want to say
There,
it's part of it. Yeah.
I think more than any other industry, there's way more variables at play for what we're doing and helping build an artist's
Hmm.
career and making it
Yeah.
work. There's just
Yeah.
an insane amount of variables at play. And going back to
Yes.
the magic and the timing of it all, it's a fact. I got two final questions for you.
Uh-huh.
The state of rock music.
Yes.
I'm kind of feeling a resurgence. Am I right or am I wrong?
I think so too. I say that with a little bit of hesitancy, but I agree because I think, I feel like I've been feeling that resurgence for a long time, but it does feel real. I just got back from London a few days ago as we were over there with our client, Perfume Genius. And, there's definitely, more. it feels like, yeah, there's definitely some guitar centric stuff that's really happening. With streaming, every genre has a seat at the table, right? Like there was a period of time that wasn't the case when you were getting your music through, magazines and, terrestrial radio stations and MTV, VH1. There was always like one genre that was going to be the king of the hill. Now every genre is available, and it's just kind of how the seats get rearranged. And I think that, rock music, of course, has never fully gone away, but it does feel like it is resurging. There's just a lot of great bands. I mean, a lot of great bands right now. And then you're seeing, bands break out, that in a deeper way. And that's great. So knock on wood, because that's where it's certainly where our bread is buttered, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I hope it comes back. And I feel like
Yeah.
the younger generation coming up, there's a little bit more angst that they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's going
Yeah.
to channel some rock music, because I need
But
some rock
there's
music.
no need for angst in the world right now. Everything's great here in America.
Well,
So
yeah, yeah.
yes.
Let's
Yeah.
keep our rose-colored glasses on. Why don't we?
Yeah.
Last question I'll hit you with before I let you go, because I know you're busy. When I ask you about a moment throughout your career that you feel is a real highlight, a real fulfilling moment, something that jumps out as maybe the biggest milestone moment of your career, what comes to mind?
Man. I think, I don't know if I would say like a particular, I mean, can I name a few moments? Because
Yeah.
it's hard. I think, when I was 31, recently 31, and Death Cab hired me, I had been, I moved to San Francisco to work for a management company. I'd been managing some artists there. I had some artists that had signed to record deals and never, got a lot of, never did anything. And, kind of felt like, man, I'm a really good painter if I could just get the right canvas, or something. Or if I could. And, when Death Cab hired me, they were immediately the biggest band on our roster, even though the Death Cab that hired me was not, they were selling, 50,000 records on the former label Barsoop, which is a lot of records for an independent label in 2003. But, that record went on to, is platinum now. This is the record that came out after, after they hired me. I mean, certainly that record breaking open and was the first real big career highlight for me. I think, it was just years of a lot of like, feeling like I was pushing the boulder up the hill and not getting much help. And then I felt like, oh, wow, this is what it looks like up here, a little bit. So that was one. I think, from there, it's just, more recently, selling out 3 Hollywood Bowls on the Postal Service Death Cab tour.
Yeah.
That was on 20th anniversary tour, 2 Madison Square Gardens selling out and, basically blowing out in a day. Like things that we were not expecting that, and so that's just a really, awesome accomplishment for my clients. And to be able to be part of that, and then there's like much smaller things, there's a competitive situation for signing a management client and you win. And that you're excited because you love the band and you beat out, and then there's the competitive side. And you're like, all right, yeah, just beat out this company, this manager. So
Could say
those
the
are
same on
fun.
my side. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just like, yeah, I'm just like, hey, like Perfume Genius. That was a very competitive one. And, we've been working with them about a year and a half and it's lovely. It's great. And I've been a fan for a long time. So you're like, that's exciting. And then, just, personal things like getting to meet your heroes because you've been doing this a long time, or, being able to have experiences that you might not normally have access to because of this.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
weird. It's
I
weird
could go
working
on,
with
but yeah,
it's weird working with artists, because when you're so ingrained with the
yeah,
artist and you're working day in and day out
yeah,
relentlessly,
yeah,
it's like their home runs feel like
yeah.
your home runs, and those
Yes,
those become the moments that you look back on. And yeah, I totally agree with you. But
yeah,
Jordan, I
yeah.
appreciate you jumping on this and taking time out of your day, and
Oh yeah, it was
hopefully
really, really,
we shared some stuff to help some artists out there.
yeah, it was really, really fun. Thanks for having me, and I'm sorry we started a few minutes, but it's great to chat. It's fun thinking about this stuff too. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Yeah.
doing it.
Okay.